Hello and thank you for joining us on World Now. I am Ekanem Ikpeme. Russian President Vladimir Putin says there will be no more war against Ukraine if Russia is treated with respect by Western nations. He has also dismissed the claim that Moscow is planning to attack European countries as nonsense. Earlier this month, President Putin said Russia was not planning to go to war with Europe, but was ready to go to war immediately if European nations wanted to. President Putin also adds that there will be no more invasion of Ukraine if Russia is not cheated by Europe, just like it was cheated with the eastward expansion of NATO. Shortly after those statements, 7 people were reportedly killed by a Russian missile strike on Ukraine's southern region of Odessa. 15 others were also injured, and note that Russia's invasion of Ukraine began in February 2022. Joining me now from Moscow to discuss this is Dr. Godwin Ibe, the chairman, Nigerians in the Diaspora, Russia. Hello.
Thank you for having me. Am I audible? Thank you for having me.
It's my privilege. So the Russian president is getting more direct about his conditions for ceasefire, from the ceding of territories by Ukraine to the demand for respect by European nations. What do you think President Putin means by respect in the context of the Russia-Ukraine war? And do you also think that Putin's demand for respect is a genuine concern for negotiating tactic? Let's talk about his attempt to ward off international interference.
Yes, a very, very good question. In the world of geopolitics, respect does not mean respect for feelings, but it means respect of tactical, strategic, and national interests. And usually this is clear. Their modus operandi in the geopolitical world, for example, the issue of indivisible security, the Monroe Doctrine, the recognition of different types of threats, like is a threat existential or is a threat just of an economic nature. This particular conflict in Ukraine between Russia and NATO staged in Ukraine, for the Russian side is seen as an existential threat, as meddling in Russia's sphere of influence and expansion of NATO close to Russia's border. So it is seen as a provoked aggression. And this didn't start all at once. You can go back to as much as you want, but I think reasonably and objectively, you could start from 2014 with the Maidan revolution and the overthrow of the democratically elected President Yanukovych and the seizure of Crimea by the Russian special forces. So this respect is recognition. For example, the United States would be very, very upset if Russia brings in missiles to Venezuela. Similarly, Russia will be very upset if NATO expands to Ukraine. These are the both spoken and unspoken rules of the big geopolitical players. Of course, like I say, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others.
So do we see Western nations shifting grounds on issuing more sanctions against Russia? And do you think the ones issued so far have changed anything about President Putin's stance on the war?
You know, there's a famous quote that it's only a madman that does something repeatedly and expects a different result. The European sanctions, if we want to count them in terms of round, they are like 19 rounds. I mean, you have to. I don't know what kind of, even if you add secondary school years and the years you spend in the institute, I doubt they'll be up to 19. To do something 19 times speaks volumes about its effectiveness. Now, concerning the ability of it to change Russia's compass, geopolitical compass, it has absolutely no bearing. It's not going. Of course, the war is costly on both sides. I'm saying otherwise, but because of the degree to which Russia perceives the threat in Ukraine, it is willing to do more, to sacrifice more, to achieve its geopolitical goals. So that's the way that's the situation on the ground.
So at a time, President Putin is saying there must be no further attack on Russia, Ukraine is getting financial support from the EU for defense. With this being the picture, do you see the war ending anytime soon?
No, I don't see the war ending anytime soon. The amount of billions, if I'm not mistaken, 27 billion or something, is enough to sustain the war for 2 years. I do not see the war ending soon with such kind of funding. The question is what will happen in 2 years? We can see Russia is gaining ground territory at a peak of 1,000 square kilometers per month. Already has 20% of, do I say, ex-Ukraine. Soldiers are dying on both sides, which is very, very regrettable. There are also terrorist operation organized on civilian infrastructure, like, for example, Russia's Shadow Fleet, which is recognized by the West, but not really recognized in Russia. And what else? The dynamics of the war doesn't show that there's that while there's a wish for peace, no side is ready to compromise on the core tenets that peace would require. For example, Ukraine doesn't want to give up on territory. It doesn't want to leave the parts of Donbass that it administers at the moment. And Russia is not going to accept any NATO troops on the ground, and is ready to go militarily to solve its geopolitical goals if diplomatic or political solution doesn't work.
And talking about compromise, last month, President Putin said if Europe wants to go into war with Russia, Russia will immediately respond. But now he has dismissed the claim. Do you see that as a subtle warning to Western nations?
It is not a warning, it's a fact. Putin wasn't mincing words, and I'll repeat it again. According to him, if Europe wants to go into war, Russia is ready, and I strongly believe that to be true. Russia is ready. I also believe that the conflict in Ukraine, because Ukrainians are seen as brothers of Russia. They're seen as one type of Slavic people. The operation in Ukraine is more like a surgical operation. It goes, of course, with lots of losses, but it's fought with gloves. Let me put it this way. But a battle with Europe, there will be no gloves. It will be certainly mutually assured destruction. It will invoke NATO Article 5 treaty definitely to cause a nuclear conflict among nuclear powers, and that means that there will be mutually assured destruction on all sides. That is why President Putin said that if such a unfortunate incident happens, there will be no one left to negotiate with. So it could spell the end of humanity.
And that warning, he has also given that warning that there should be no more attack on Russia. Can this be possible at a time that it is still attacking Ukraine?
No, no, no. That is not a. That is not a. It's not. There's nuclear doctrine. There are specific things that could fulfill the requirement for a nuclear attack. It is not just an attack on Russian territory. It is something like a decapitation strike, or it's a strike that leads to the existential crisis of the Russian Federation. That is well spelled out in the nuclear doctrine. And for as of today, the nuclear doctrine is seen as defensive in the sense that it's not a first strike doctrine, but definitely it holds part of the doctrine is retaliatory strike. So after a first strike, there's definitely going to be a retaliatory strike, and that does not really require a human presence or control. The mutually assured destruction means that both sides, both the NATO, the United States, and the Russian side have early warning signals and what you call the dead man's hand, a kind of system where if there's a loss of command, automatically nuclear bombs will be released to designated targets. So it doesn't even require human control. And I think both the NATO side and the Russian side are well aware of this fact.
So let's get you to give us a first-hand report. You live in Russia. Please help us know how the citizens feel about this war that has been lingering since February 2022.
Well, the masks have been taken off. It's quite unfortunate because the Russians see themselves closer to, historically, since the fall of the Soviet Union, have seen themselves closer to Europe than even Asia. But with this conflict, they are pivoting more to Asia, to the Southeast Asia, and pivoting away from Europe. Also, U.S. services are very, very popular, whether it's the social media, whether it's the IT services, the financial system, payment systems. These were all very popular in Russia, and not just because of, do I say propaganda, but because they are really effective, really convenient, and a lot of people really love using it. So they had a lot of user base. And also, for many years, it's a well-known fact that Russians are huge spenders. They spend a huge percentage of their disposable income on retail, even when they travel around the world. So it's very Russian tourists are treated have always been treated with the utmost respect from a consumer patronization point of view. With these, there's import substitution, parallel imports, change of re-strategizing of the whole economy, which is a loss for both sides because it was a great avenue for business. Now, speaking about the feelings of the people towards the conflict, our president has a super high approval ratings according to both Eastern and Western publication in the range of 90%. That means most of the citizenry support his actions, believe that he is a capable leader and is leading them in the right direction. There is no contest or question about the approval rating of President Vladimir Putin in Russia. So the question is...
Dr. Godwinibi, the chairman Nigerians in the diaspora, Russia, it was a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
We'll take a quick